everybody! Today's lesson is going to be about how we will predict the genotype and phenotype of an offspring using a Punnett square. I know that I just use a lot of big words, and we're going to go over all of the vocabulary. We're going to go over how to perform a Punnett square, so just sit tight and be sure to grab out that note sheet that was handed out to you, and I will go along in the note sheet step by step with how to know what these words mean, and we're going to learn how to do the Punnett square like I said. So before I move on, before we get into that, what I would like to do is I'd like to go over your objectives. So after you're done watching this video and after you have done and completed the worksheet, I would first like my students to use the specific vocabulary within this genetics lesson and moving forward using that vocabulary to describe parents, the offspring, and also the possible outcomes of their genetic makeup. So using those words genotype, phenotype. And then secondly, of course, I would like my students to be able to perform a Punnett square on their own. This is going to be something that you're tested on in my class, and then also in future classes. It's going to help you to be successful in 8th grade as well as be successful in 9th grade too. So Punnett squares aren't going away. You're going to have them pretty much for the rest of your high school career. To begin, just take a moment. Know that genetics can be confusing, and all of these words are thrown at you at one time. Take it step by step. Like I said, we're going to break it down. We're going to talk about the vocabulary first. Make sure you really have that vocabulary in your head. You know what we're saying when we say these words. And then from there, we are going to move into Punnett squares. So, like with any video that you might watch, if you need to pause the video, if you need to rewind the video to hear something that I might have said before, obviously do that. Everyone has the ability to do whatever they want with this video. So if you want to watch it the first time all the way through, then do your notes, you have that option. If you want to rewind to just see what I said a few seconds before, obviously you can do that. This video is really important. It's going to be on Schoology for you to access for the rest of this unit, and so you should be taking these notes really seriously. Although I'm not in the classroom, I'm here with this video for you. Obviously, I'll be back tomorrow to answer any questions you might have, but you're learning from this video. So this is your responsibility to understand what's going on so that when we come back all together tomorrow, we can answer any questions and do some more Punnett square practice. All right, here we go. Vocab. Prefix and suffix. We've talked about this before. This is a review. And so remember that first prefix, hetero, it means different. Now this is translated from the Greek language, and when it is translated, it actually means different. So any word that you might see that starts with the prefix hetero, H-E-T-E-R-O, it's going to mean different. So we've talked about heterogeneous before, those different mixtures. Heteronym, that's two different words. And then heterochromatic. Heterochromatic means different colors because that chromatic, that suffix means colors. And then our second prefix, homo, H-O-M-O, that is also from the Greek language. When it's directly translated, it means the same. And so here we have some other examples. Homogeneous, when a mixture is the same throughout. So that example is like a smoothie is the same throughout. Homonym, you've probably heard of that word before. A homonym is two words that mean the same thing. And then again, homochromatic, those are going to be two colors that are the same. And then our suffix. We only have one suffix to go over, and this is zygous. And so the suffix zygous, when you see that at the end of the word, it's going to mean having zygotes of a specific kind. What does that mean? You might not remember what a zygote is, and so that's why I put this reminder at the bottom. A zygote is the resulting new cell after the process of fertilization. So when you have egg and sperm come together, they make that new cell. That new cell we refer to as a zygote. And the word zygote and the suffix zygous are very similar. So you should probably remember that when those two things come together, what that is called is a zygote. And so what I want you to do on your paper for your notes, you have answers 1 through 3 so far, and we are up to number 4. So number 4, I want you to write in your own words, what is a definition for the word heterozygous? You can refer to the prefix and the suffix, but I want this to be in your 7th grader language. How are you going to remember what the word heterozygous means? So go ahead and write that on your paper right now. If you want to pause the video to take a second to do that, of course you can do that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what is genetic information. Genetic information is going to be the genes or that information that's received from a biological mother and father. Mother and father create a zygote. What is that information that that zygote gets? When we're talking in genetics about this, all of that information that's inside that new cell, we call it a genotype. We've dealt with genotypes before when we were doing that activity in class, and so a genotype is represented by 2 letters. And I have those 3 examples around the bottom. Capital B, capital B, capital B, lower b, and 2 lowercase b's. These 2 letters, whether it's capital or lowercase, one is represented from the father, one is represented from the mother. A really good summary for what is genetic information. The genotype is the genetic information given to an offspring, so that's a child, from its biological mother and biological father. So how does genetic information work? You get this information, one from mom, one from dad, so that's in the new cell. So how does that work? How is that going to affect the child? The genotype received from both parents is going to code for a trait. You have traits for everything in your body. You have traits for your eye color, for your hair color, for, remember we were talking about the shapes of your ears? For skin color, you can have traits for how tall you're going to grow. All of these things that you get from your parents, that comes from their genetic information. Their genotype helps to make up your genotype. This trait is going to be shown on the outside of an organism. So you have a trait, a genotype for hair color. But what hair color you see, what's on the outside, has a name, of course, and we call that a phenotype. The phenotype is the physical characteristics that can be seen by another human being. So when you're asked to describe a person and you say, oh, she's really tall, or that boy has really dark hair. Being tall or having dark hair, that is the phenotype. It's going to be how you describe a person. So here's the difference. Genotype is the genetic information that's on the inside of the organism. Genotype, genetic information. The phenotype is the physical characteristics that are on the outside of the organism. So phenotype, physical characteristics. And what I mean by saying it's on the outside of the organism, it's what you can see. You can see hair color, you can see eye color, you can see how tall a person is. You can look to see what shape their fingernails are. If you can physically see something on another human being, or if you're looking in the mirror, that's going to be the phenotype. So how are these two related? Because the genotype and the phenotype are directly related to one another. The genotype is what's inside of you. It's the genes that are inside of you. And the genotype, the genes that are inside of you, code for what phenotype you have. So depending upon what genetic information you have inside of you is going to determine whether you have blonde or red hair, whether you have blue or green eyes. So if you're thinking about yourself in this situation, the genetic information that's inside of you is obviously going to be different than the genetic information that's inside of someone else. So the genetic information that's inside of you for your hair color is going to be different from the genetic information that I have for my hair color. So that's why we have two different hair colors. If you look on this slide, this is going to describe to you the difference between the three possible genotypes that a person could have. So you see capital B, capital B. This person inherited a capital B and a capital B from mom and from dad. So mom and dad both had a capital B. When we see this combination, we're going to call that a homozygous genotype. And remember that prefix homo means same. So, two uppercase letters, that's the same. That person is a homozygote. Now they're capital B's because they received a dominant trait from both of their parents. Mom had a dominant, dad had a dominant trait. So now, obviously, this kid has two dominant traits inside of him. Two dominant letters from each parent means the child will show the dominant trait. Moving to the middle. Capital B, lowercase b. This is another possibility that we could have. With a capital B and a lowercase b, those are two different letter cases, so we're going to call this a heterozygote. Remember that prefix hetero means different. So this means that a child could have received a dominant trait from mom and a recessive trait from dad. With a dominant and a recessive fused into one person, this person is a heterozygote, two different. One dominant letter from either parent means the child will show the dominant trait. And lastly, lowercase b, lowercase b. We call this a homozygote because two lowercase letters next to one another, they're the same letter case, so homo means same, homozygote. However, you see how this homozygote is different from the first one? This one has two lowercase letters, so what that means is there is no dominant trait in this child. No dominant trait whatsoever means that that person is going to show the recessive trait. Examples of recessive traits in humans, a really common one is going to be the red hair color. Not a lot of people within our society have red hair, and that's because it is a recessive trait. If someone has red hair, red colored hair, they have to inherit the recessive trait from mom and dad. So that possibility is really, really slim. That's why not a lot of people have red hair. It's uncommon. Doesn't mean it's any different though. It's really nice hair color. Okay, if you need to take a break, you can do that. You can pause the video. You can maybe rewind it to the beginning to get a nice overview of all of that vocabulary. It was a lot. I'm pretty tired myself. So you can stop if you would like, but you have to make sure that you get all of this done within today's period. So you can take a break if you want, pause the video, rewind, but then we're moving on to Punnett squares. And this is fun. If you